Given there's been extensive guidance about the relationship between Peter Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein, why was he appointed to that job? And in the face of different warnings with regard to that relationship, does this leave the Prime Minister's judgment in question?
Well, as we set out yesterday, the decision was taken because new information came to light that wasn't available at the time of the appointment. That decision has rightly been taken, and now our focus continues to be on the work that we will continue to do, not just with the US government, but with governments across the world, under the Prime Minister's strong leadership, as we've seen here in Ukraine, where I've been meeting with President Zelenskyy and talking about exactly the things that our Prime Minister has been doing.
Were there no alarm bells at any point about a man who was clearly close to somebody who was a convicted paedophile?
Well, clearly, as we set out yesterday, new information came to light that was not available at the time of the appointment, and that's why the decision was rightly taken. And now that it has been taken, we have to focus on really the important work that the government needs to do, that I do as Foreign Secretary, working with governments across the world on strengthening UK security, strengthening UK prosperity. That's the most important part of this job.
In terms of your trip to Ukraine, over the last few days we have seen Russia hit a government building. We've seen drones over Poland on NATO territory. What do you think the message is that President Putin is trying to send here?
Well, I think it's extremely serious that we've seen continued Putin's aggression and walking away from the kind of peace, just and lasting peace or ceasefire that we want to see for Ukraine. And we know too that in the end, Ukraine's security is our security. It's that on which Europe's stability and security depends. And that's why today we're announcing stronger sanctions on Russia, stronger economic pressure on Russia, as well as further support for the Ukrainian people who have shown such resilience, because ultimately this is about our security too.
In terms of the drones that we saw over the last few days, President Putin says he thinks they could have been accidental. That goes against what NATO's view is and many other experts. Without the continued and consistent support from the United States for Ukraine, can the UK, Europe and other allies actually keep this country going? Can it stay in the fight and can it remain a sovereign nation without America being there?
Well, I think we've seen incredible resilience, courage and strength from the people of Ukraine in the face of the aggression from Putin, the brutal invasion. And that has been continuing, and the UK will always show our support. We're continuing on new work with the Ukrainian people and armed forces around drone technology. We've seen the work with countries, not just across Europe, but others as well, wanting to support a coalition of the willing, security guarantees for Ukraine to try and build a peace process. But ultimately, we also need that pressure on Russia, including economic pressure, including the stronger sanctions. And that's why we're setting out 100 new sanctions from the UK. We want other countries to do the same.
Will you be pushing Donald Trump to do that when he's over in the UK on the state visit this week?
Well, I welcome the continued dedication, the commitment that the President has made to an end to the war. And we will, of course, be talking about the economic pressure that we need on Russia. Of course, we will talk about the continued security issues that we have discussed with the US, with other countries over a long period of time. And that partnership, that relationship is incredibly important. But ultimately, this is partly about what we do to bring Russia back to the table, partly what we do to keep supporting Ukraine, and partly what we do to make sure that there's a plan for the future, a plan once you get past the ceasefire to make sure that there are security guarantees. That's what I've been talking to President Zelenskyy about here today, and talking to people really across the Ukrainian government.
Do you think there is a possibility of that ceasefire you speak of?
So I think peace is possible, but we have to be ready for it, and we have to do everything possible we can to get there. Because the reason for this is about our security. It's for Ukraine, this is a European country that is facing bombardment that continued each night. We've seen some of the damage, I've seen some of the evidence here, but it's also about the fact that whether that be Polish airspace, whether that be the impact on the instability across Europe, that our security and the stability right across Europe depends on the security of Ukraine as well.
Obviously, it's not just this war that's going on, we've got Gaza at the same time. What are your feelings about Israel hitting a sovereign nation, an ally nation, to the UK, to America, to many other nations? And also, do you think that the West has failed Gaza, that this war is still going on, that we're looking at the scenes that we are seeing from there now?
Well, the scenes in Gaza are just horrendous, and truly horrendous, and we've seen famine, we've seen this ongoing humanitarian crisis there. That's why it's so urgent that we get not just a ceasefire but the humanitarian aid in, but also the pathway to a two-state solution. That's why we've set out the pathway to recognition of Palestine, but it's also why I think we have strongly condemned the quite shocking strikes in Doha, the violation of a country's sovereignty, and that is taking us further away from the ceasefire, from the negotiations we need. We need to pull that back on track, because in the end, the two-state solution is the only way that we have both security for Israel and also security for Palestinian people, for Palestine as well.
You say there about recognising Palestine. Obviously, the Prime Minister laid down a number of criteria, none of which have been met. Does this mean that we are on the verge now of formally making that recognition?
Well, we set out a pathway for recognition. That's what the Prime Minister set out in the run-up to the UN General Assembly. And we will go through that process as we build up to the General Assembly. That's important that we do. But you're right, there were some important issues that the Prime Minister set out about needing commitment to a ceasefire, about needing a commitment to a lasting peace. Currently, we've seen the opposite with the strikes on Doha. That is hugely serious. We have to get the peace process back on track for the Middle East.
You've only been in this job a very short period of time, and in that short time, we've seen an increase in Russian aggression. We've seen Israel hit a sovereign nation. We've seen the ongoing Gaza offensive, the critical situation in Sudan, as well as many other things that must come across your desk. Just how desperately unstable does the world feel at this point to you?
I think there is significant global instability and insecurity. There's particular areas of crisis and particular serious conflicts, but also much more widely. I think there's an issue for us to recognise that the work that we do with countries across the world is also what strengthens our security back at home. It's what strengthens our economy and our prosperity back at home with the trade deals that we can do. It's what helps prevent real problems at home if we can do agreements with other countries to keep us safe. So in the end, this is about Britain's interests, about the partnerships that we build that make us a stronger country.
This must have been a special place for you today, given that you have your connection with the family that lived with you.
Yeah, I know personally from like many thousands of families across the UK. We welcomed in Ukrainian family, and I know from talking to them at the very beginning of the conflict here, just how devastating it was for them, for their families, but also to see here the strength of the Ukrainian people, their determination, their resilience, and their determination to stand up against Russian aggression, against Putin's aggression. They do so on behalf of all of us, because we know that their security affects us too. And for families here in Ukraine who continue to show that resilience and that belief in a better future, we're on their side as they do that.